From KAMR Local 4 News, your local election headquarters, this is Politics Today.
New leadership, same issues. How Tuesday night's election will reshape the Potter County Commissioners Court as they tackle those major issues. And we're going to hear from one of the candidates competing for a seat that just opened up to represent our area. Her plans, if elected, in November. Welcome into Politics Today. I'm Andy Justice. This past week, Texas hosted their March primaries, one of a few states to have elections and giving the country a glance at what to expect in the midterms. For some, victory was sweet. For others, the title incumbent didn't matter. So let's start with the Potter County Commissioners Court. Financial issues coming out of Potter County Commissioners Court lately, and incumbents have paid the price. Blair Schaefer is the incumbent, but early numbers were pointing toward Jeff Rafe. It stayed that way. Rafe ended up winning by just a few votes. As of a few days ago, no recount had been requested, but we'll continue to follow that. That could change. Heading now to Precinct 4 on the Democrat side, it's another loss for the incumbent, Timothy Gassaway. 77 votes better than Warren Coble. Once again, we haven't heard of a recount being asked for just yet. Gassaway will take on Jose Perez in November if those numbers stand up. With a majority new commissioners court expected after November, these candidates will be stepping into the role with some big projects to tackle. Politics Today's Blas Guerrero explains what they'll face.
Two incumbent commissioners lost their races in Tuesday's primary election. In Precinct 2, Republican challenger Jeff Rafe defeated incumbent Blair Schaefer and will run unopposed in the November general election. In Precinct 4, Democratic challenger Timothy Gassaway defeated incumbent Warren Coble and will face Republican Jose Perez. Some candidates say the results may reflect voters wanting something different.
But I think what we're seeing here is really something that is kind of across the board. People are looking for a change. And even if the people that vote for you think you've done a fine job in your seat, people are looking for a change. And so your seat is as up for grabs as anybody's.
County issues such as the aging jail and county finances have also been part of recent conversations.
Jail was a few of the issues, and we've been working to address that, and that's probably going to be addressed within the next 9 months when I'm still commissioner.
Schaefer says he plans to continue working on county priorities through the remainder of his term. Meanwhile, the race for Potter County Judge is now moving towards the general election. Republican candidate Michelle Eggleston says voters she spoke with are focused on the county's long-term challenges.
But we certainly have to have our citizens buy in and understand what the issues are in connection with that. And I'm committed to researching that and visiting with citizens to get their input on how we should move forward with that issue.
Blas, thank you for that report. With new leadership coming to the Commissioners Court next year, those officials could soon face major decisions about the future of the county jail, which we've reported on extensively, long-term county spending, and how to plan for future growth. Candidates in several of the county races say the primary results may signal voters are looking for a change in local leadership. The general election in November will determine whether that shift continues across the Potter County Commissioners Court. Heading now to District 13, this seat held by Congressman Ronnie Jackson for many years now. He will continue to serve in that role. The Associated Press calling the race around 8 o'clock Tuesday night for incumbent Ronnie Jackson. I do want to say he advances into the general election in November. But if you go back, Jackson first won this seat in 2020. If he's going to keep that seat long term, he'll have to face Democrat Mark Nair in November. Heading now to U.S. Rep for District 19. This seat was formerly held by Jody Arrington, who decided not to run for re-election. Most of the precincts reporting, and it looks like Tom Snell picked up 40%, but that is not enough to claim victory. They'll be heading to a runoff on May 26. Another lawmaker not running for re-election is John Smithy. Smithy served the 86th district with pride since 1985. Two candidates jumped into that race, with most of the precincts reporting enough to call it at this point. Holly Jeffries running away with it, 66% of the vote. She'll now move on to the November election. Jeffries ran her campaign on keeping Panhandle water in the Panhandle, along with eliminating school property taxes. As a nurse practitioner, Jeffries explained she wants to continue to do the work she's already established for rural health care. She explains how she's preparing for the election in November. Take a listen.
Just keep working, keep meeting people, keep finding issues, working on solutions to those issues so we can take in a really solid plan when the first session starts in January.
Jeffrey says when it comes to her position at WT, if she does run in District 86, she'll have to step down from her role there. Heading to District 88, where Ken King looks to be elected to his 8th term in the district. King is leading with 54% of the vote. Again, the reason why we say it, they still have to be canvassed. There's still some work to be done. John Browning picked up 46%, pretty close race there. Representative Ken King said he was feeling confident as election results began to come in. King spoke with our Blas Guerrero at his watch party on Tuesday night, saying after months of traveling across the area, voters raised concerns about border security and property taxes. He also pointed to legislation passed after the Smokehouse Creek fire aimed at improving wildfire response across Texas. King says while those efforts have helped communication between first responders during major disasters, it's still an issue lawmakers hope to address.
We have a disaster, and we have all the state resources, and the cavalry comes to help. We're minimum 36 hours before we achieve interoperability, meaning our first responders can all talk to each other. That issue was a priority of mine in the legislative session.
King says improving coordination between agencies will again be a top priority when lawmakers return to Austin during the next session. So, were these results what political experts expected? Any big surprises here? Well, we're going to hear from a few of our area political professors about what they thought when it came to primary night. Keep it here. The primary election in Texas continued to beg the question, will Democrats finally pick up a big win in Texas? It also highlighted that incumbents aren't always safe, no matter how long they've been in office. We brought in Aaron Favor from Amarillo College to hear his thoughts on Tuesday night's results.
Aaron, good to see you as always. Thanks for joining us.
Likewise, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. How did the incumbents fare in elections around the state?
Well, I mean, we got a lot of victories and not a lot of surprises.
Right, absolutely. And so you said they had quite a bit of victories. Did they tend to fare well around the state, or what was kind of your reaction to that?
Yeah, for sure. There was, there was the Dan Patrick, that turned out exactly the way it was probably going to. Obviously, his contenders weren't too big of obstacles, but that was it. That was expected. Probably one of the most difficult of those elections among the Democrats specifically took place in the U.S. Senate primary. And I mean, those two candidates raised way more money than in I think any other race, and spent a tremendous amount of money as well. And now there's going to be plenty of it left over for the November election.
Yes, sir. And really kind of sticking with the statewide issue. So, there's the controversy surrounding the Jasmine Crockett, James Talarico race because of the issue with the Dallas ruling in the polling places. Have you seen anything like this in a statewide election?
It's bizarre. No, not really. Not recently. But on the other hand, there's always room for new things to be occurring, especially I guess if Dallas County, I guess it's because of the size of the county and because of the specific demographics and the age categories and the whole list of all kinds of things that the past way that they manage things. My understanding is that these kinds of things happen.
Absolutely. Okay, now the race between Senator John Cornyn and AG Ken Paxton. Of course, Cornyn's been in office since 2002. I mean, long time. Texans have come to really know him over the last few decades. How significant of a shakeup could this be if Paxton pulls this off?
Oh man, that's a great question. It could be very significant for a lot of reasons, and probably the most important primary one of those is that there's among all the candidates that are in that race, Senator Cornyn is by far the most safe. The safest candidate. Everybody knows exactly where he stands on national and state issues. People know where he stands. He's got a voting record. He has a clear record in his committee work. He has, significant number of relationships there within the Senate that are already built. Won't require a lot of extra energy and time to develop. And the idea that the Attorney General Kim Paxton could be brought in and elected could shake things up a little bit for one of a million reasons. He is a little bit of more of a polarizing figure, and frankly, a lot of people would argue that that's a good thing. It's kind of it's a strange thing to say because it sounds like it means that it's emblematic of a terrible or a toxic type of politics, but. Right. You want to be able to draw contrast and compare yourself to other people. Otherwise, you got to ask yourself, why am I running? If I'm so similar to this other candidate, is there really, if there's not a difference and it's not easily discernible right. For voters, that's one way of thinking about that.
Okay. This primary did mark the most expensive in Texas history. Candidates in multiple races spending high amounts of money to get their candidate to the race in November. It was also tested the power of President Trump's endorsement. He endorsed more than 130 incumbents and new candidates in Texas, some winning those races, others did not. Sid Miller was an example. He did not make it to the general election in November. We're going to hear from another political expert about his thoughts on the primary election. Politics Today continues after this. Welcome back, everyone. There were some standards last week in the primary election, but there were also some moments that experts didn't quite expect. Here's Dr. David Roush, the Till Bivens Professor of Political Science at West Texas A&M University.
Primary election, it was remarkably high turnout for a primary election, but in large part that's because in certain parts of the state we had like new open office, open seats that we don't normally have, that someone had served for a long time. Let's just call it the 86th House District, where someone had served for a long time, and now we have some candidates running for an open seat. That usually attracts a lot more voters. The Democrats, for example, had 2 strong campaigners for the U.S. Senate. That attracted a lot of voters. So primaries usually don't have a high turnout because they're primaries, and they usually just attract the most Democrats and the most Republicans. And in this case, they probably did the same thing, but there were a lot more of them. Analyzing a primary election probably takes even longer than analyzing a general election, because in a general election you have Democrats and Republicans head-to-head. Here you have Republicans running against Republicans and Democrats running against Democrats, different brands of Democrats, different brands of Republicans. So it's quite possible you could see, if you take a look, it's probably more important when you're looking at a primary to see who didn't vote in that party's primary. Are they traditional Republicans that always vote in the Republican primary, and all of a sudden their name shows up on the Democratic list? What happened there? So there are some has been some discussions in some of the media and some other experts that it's possible that some Republicans voted in the Democratic primary to try to influence who would win the Senate nomination. So there'd be an easier time for the Republican candidate in the fall. We'll have to see. Though the really interesting thing was there was a candidate down in maybe not on the border but close to the border she was a Republican running unopposed, I believe, for constable, either constable or justice of the peace. But she was running as an unopposed Republican, but she wanted to vote in the Democratic primary to try to influence the Senate race. So she, as a Republican, actually voted in the Democratic primary, which now makes her ineligible to run for that office, even though she was running unopposed. She lost herself in office. Part of the incumbent race thing was also when the Republican State House and State Senate redistricted some of the Democrats out of their districts, that in some cases you're running in a district you've never run in before, or you only have a tiny sliver that's voted for you before. You had several districts where there were Democratic incumbents running against other Democratic incumbents. So surely one of the incumbents is going to have to lose there because there's 2 of them and only one can be nominated. I think probably the biggest incumbent, I don't want to say surprise because we all kind of figured it would happen, and we being people who pay attention and really care, Senator Cornyn actually not winning his nomination outright. So he actually has to run in a runoff. Traditionally, and there's really no political science theory out there to justify anything I'm about to say right now, traditionally, the runoff elections have the lowest voter turnout. So you get the truly most partisan voters. In a closely divided Senate, you want to have as much seniority and as much power as possible. It doesn't really matter if the Democrats have 90 senators to 10, or even backwards 10 to 90. If you don't have a lot of power, there's really no benefit to you having a brand new senator, because it takes a little while for senators to work with other senators. Primaries are difficult because voters have to go in there and decide between this Republican and this Republican, or this Democrat and this Democrat. They don't have that automatic cue of, oh, they're a Democrat, I can vote for them. And someone was saying there was just all sorts of personality attacks. And all I could say when that person said that was, aha, that's what a primary does. It's all based on personality. Do you like the guy? Do you like that woman? Do you hate her? Type of things. So it's more personality than it is policy, because they tend to have the same policies. Just how they word them might be a little different.
Telling you, Dr. Roush can talk politics all day long. I want to go back to something that he mentioned, specifically that U.S. Senate race. Now, in the primary, President Trump didn't endorse anyone in that race. Now the big question is, who's going to get Trump's blessing as they move into that runoff election on May 26th? Now, he did say that he would want the other person to drop out. If President Trump nominates John Cornyn, he would then want Ken Paxton to bow out. And that could go either way. Sources say that he is expected to back Cornyn, but Paxton has said, in response to that he would consider dropping out if the Senate eliminates the filibuster and passes the SAVE Act. Up next, we'll go over some other races here in Texas. Don't go anywhere. Governor Greg Abbott has been in office for more than 10 years now. On Tuesday, Texans at the ballot box said they believe in his vision for the state, once again getting that Republican Party nomination. The Associated Press calling this race early on Tuesday night. It's one of the first ones that came down, picking up the win with more than 82% of the vote. This race had a number of candidates, by the way. Abbott will face Gina Hinojosa in November. This race also called early in the evening. Nearly all of the precincts reporting Hinojosa at one point tallied 59% of the vote, and it is holding steady at that number. Let's look at who is leading in the GOP race for Texas Attorney General. Nearly all precincts reporting a close race. This is going to go to a runoff between Mays Middleton and current Congressman Chip Roy. Middleton leads with 39% of the vote. Again, headed to a runoff on May 26. On the Democratic side, Nathan Johnson couldn't quite get the 50% plus one he needed to avoid a runoff. He will be going to a runoff in May as well. We're going to be wrapping up politics today after this quick break. Don't go anywhere. Congressman Ronnie Jackson celebrating what he calls a win for District 13 in the Farm Bill. Let's talk about what happened this week. Some of the provisions include feral swine eradication and control, dietary guideline reforms, pilot programs, and reforms to crop insurance. Also looking at changes to how they handle animal disease outbreak. Thanks again for tuning in to another edition of Politics Today. Have a great week, and we will see you next Sunday.